Minnesota Vikings will and should be aggressive, because if they're not getting JJ McCarthy.
Well, a guy that's close to the situation has been talking about it, and from a very level-headed, spot in Paul Allen. He had the tweet yesterday saying that the fan base is going to be toxic, and then today I see that he's very aware of the competition to get up the draft board. Now, the Vikings are the team that is the best position to do so, but they're not the only team.
Right.
He's talking about that they are keeping their eye on the Denver Broncos. I mean, Paul Allen is still bandying about Patrick Surtain and this Broncos organization that could reach a spot of desperation that it would deliver you an unprecedented amount of not only draft capital, but an NFL star caliber player in Patrick Surtain potentially. I mean, that's how desperate they are at the quarterback position. Do you think that Sam Darnold is a bad option? What do they have in Denver? But so they're very aware of what they're up against and the need to improve at the position and do it through the draft.
What do you think the package would be hypothetically? Because I've said from the beginning,
I
know Benjamin Albright, who's lockstep with everything, including the Broncos, the team that he covers, has been pretty adamant. Number one, the Broncos have called, and number two, like, they want to build around Patrick Surtain.
Mm-hmm.
If Patrick Surtain is floated in a trade package, what else would you need from Denver outside of, what do they pick, 12? Yeah. You would need 12 Surtain, and what else?
Probably another first. And that's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But don't you think
that's a better package than the Vikings can offer?
I think it is. I mean, you're in your one spot below. Am I crazy for saying that, David? I mean,
no, it's a proven entity. That's what we're arguing for Marvin. We feel like that's a proven entity as a draft pick. Well, how about a guy who is in his early 20s, who's already an all-pro caliber player? I mean, that you're going to lock in for the prime years of his career. So now you have to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get him under contract, and Austin Ford's going to sell that, to the people in Denver. But yeah, I think Surtain and 2-1s is probably what would get it done. Cardinal fans, would they be happy with that in your estimation?
I can cope with that.
What? Mr. Hold the Line can cope with that? We found it. We found his kryptonite.
Because this is the difference here. Patrick Surtain is a superstar level player in the NFL.
He turns 24 in 3 days. FYI, I don't mean to interrupt you, Damon.
No, you're good. But he's a superstar level player. That's what you're trying to get with these draft picks. I believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is that. So I'm saying you get a superstar. I'll still stay awake at night. But.
I wasn't anticipating this. This is the PHNX Cardinals version of the Red Wedding right now. Like, people's jaws are dropped to the floor. They did not see this coming. This is not something that we telegraphed or that we talked about before the show. I am shocked. I think bulk of the audience is shocked.
Yeah, people are not happy.
Captain, hold the line. We found it.
We've spoiled his brain, and he's got what is it when you're captives? It's what when your captives get you, and Stockholm syndrome. That's what Damon has from being with Bo and I.
I don't want it. I would prefer that to
it's a much better deal than the Vikings deal. It's a much better deal, but we don't know if that's available. But according to Paul Allen from Minnesota, he has heard that, we know the Broncos are trying to move up.
Right.
So, I mean, but we don't take them seriously. Why don't we take them seriously? Because they don't have the draft capital. But what's their biggest chip? They have a chip even bigger than Minnesota. It's an all-pro cornerback, which the Cardinals do not have. I mean, like, you put Patrick Surtain opposite Sean Murphy-Bunting and Garrett Williams goes in the slot. You don't need to draft a corner early. 27, 35, those are reserved for other players suddenly. Pretty tempting.
Man. I don't want to be in hold the line offices right now when Damon comes back in. He's got to do some damage control. This is tough. The times are tough for the HTL hashtag, but you guys are crushing it in the chat. Absolutely. How dare you, Damon? Jack Smith.
I wish I just didn't say anything.
Ozzy's trying to keep the crew together. HTL crew, stay together. Rudy, HTML. HTMFL. I mean, it's out of control right now.
Don't you think, too, though, they can use this against the Vikings? Like, we talk about the Giants. If this is true, I have not heard this, that the Broncos are kind of floating out Surtain in a trade-up offer. If you're Austin Ford and you go to Minnesota, you're just like, hey, guys, how do you anticipate beating this offer? if it's 2 1s and Patrick Surtain, which Albright has also kind of floated. Like if they did do the deal, Bo, it would have to be 2 1s and Surtain. Aren't the Vikings just by default out? Wouldn't you say the Vikings are done if that's the deal?
Look, I don't know if there's any legitimacy to this or if it's just speculation from people who talk about this Vikings team on a daily basis, just like you and I talk about this Cardinals team. But I'm finding this Paul Allen quote. But I mean, as far as the people who cover this team every day, they're very aware of on their peripheral as far as the teams that have the ability and what it would take to match or best of the Vikings offer. As far as just draft capital, pure draft capital, the Vikings have the most ammunition to make that move up the draft board.
I think Ossenford specifically doesn't want to acquire talent that he immediately has to pay, but I would say Surtain is the exception to the rule. Like Marvin's the exception to the rule for how they want to team build. Surtain at not even 24 years old yet, only 3 NFL seasons in his book, generational player. Like you pay a premium for a top corner. Like I don't think they'd have an issue with that. Plus everything you hear about Patrick Surtain, A+ player, A+ human being. So I think that can at least get me in a place, Bo, where it's like,
yeah,
you're adding talent. So while you're comparing Marvin to pick 12, you're really comparing Marvin to Patrick Surtain. And while there's a 3-year age gap,
yeah,
you know what you're getting. It's a proven commodity.
Here's the, and this is via Purple Persuasion, and according to Paul Allen of KFan 103. The Broncos are, quote, so desperate to move up for a quarterback, specifically J.J. McCarthy, that they could possibly include star cornerback Patrick Surtain in a trade. The Broncos could definitely be a threat to the Vikings. He said, quote, they're so desperate out Denver's way. I'm not kidding you, man. I wouldn't be surprised if it was, we want that 3 so badly. We want to give you pick 12. We will give you next year's first, and we'll give you Patrick Surtain. I'm not kidding you. They're that desperate, close quote. Paul Allen, voice of the Vikings, does a daily radio show in Minneapolis.
And this doesn't behoove him to falsify this information. Like if you remember, what did New Orleans historically do in the draft with Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton? They would trade up for players. They would trade like future ones to come up and get defensive ends, right? Like they would do things that now outside of the quarterback that would have you scratching your head. And like Mickey Loomis, very good general manager historically, but like most of that was probably coming from Sean Payton, putting pressure. I got to have this player. I fell in love with this prospect. Now you doubled and tripled down. It's a quarterback for the quarterback guru in Sean Payton after he just took it in the teeth. Basically, they're rolling with what? Who's on the roster? Jared Stidham. And they jet set it. Say what you want about Russ. He's going to start for another team. They're not taking Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Like Albright's been adamant. Penix does not fit what he wants to do. And then Bo Nix, if they take him, it'll be in the second round. You're not taking him at 12. What does that leave you? That leaves you with a if you're Sean Payton, what good does Patrick Surtain do for you if you don't have a quarterback? I'm sure that's what they're talking about.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. We could go 7-10 every year. Certainly you can with Vance Joseph as your defensive coordinator. It does not matter in a division right now, and we have talked about it. You have to draft for your division. The reigning dynasty, the NFL, the darlings, Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Jim Harbaugh are making the playoffs this year. And then, say what you want. Raiders have a little bit of mojo. I think the Broncos have lost like almost double-digit games against the Raiders. Go look that up. I think that's a real thing. The Broncos can't beat the Raiders. So it's like all that mixed together, and they've had this quarterback disarray wasteland since Peyton Manning, and then before that, John Elway. It doesn't surprise me at all. You use your best asset to secure what you think is the most important position in the NFL.
The Broncos without a quarterback, or the quarterback situation they're in right now, they're the 2018 Cardinals.
No doubt.
I mean, Patrick Surtain playing the role of Patrick Peterson. You've got, you've got a decent pass rush. They had Chandler Jones. You had Larry Fitz on that team who was still playing at a decent clip. Like that's Cortland Sutton. Like they've got pieces. They've got some guys here and there, but man, they don't have a quarterback. They don't have anybody on that roster that can do what they need necessarily to win football games, especially in that gauntlet of a division that just added Jim Harbaugh. You just gave Justin Herbert his first real shot at the NFL level with decent head coaching. And already the Kansas City Chiefs reside in that division. It's just a mess. Still looking for that losing streak. I think it's the Broncos. Will they snap their 6-game losing streak against the Raiders? I was back to start the season. So they get swept by the Raiders this year, I would assume.
Did,
so is it at 8?
Yeah.
It's at 8.
So I was right. Let's take it back to the Minnesota Vikings part of this. Like, you can sense, even in that press conference today, I know you disagree, you can sense the frustration from the fan base, from the media. You can sense the sense of urgency. No team trades up before the draft 6 weeks before with an extra first-round pick. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, typically, your draft day trade, or your pre-draft trade, rather, looks like what Carolina did last year. You're going to go from X player or X pick to number 1 to get your guy. The Vikings had to do a pre-trade just to be in competition, thus showing their hand. They were never going to be able to back off of what they did in March, and we've been adamant about that since that deal went down on a Friday. You and I got on that show and just said, there's no going backward. And I'm thankfully appreciative of what the Vikings are doing in preparation for this. They're preparing their audience. They're preparing their fan base. They're preparing their players. We're going to take a big swing. We have a risk. And if we miss, Wesley knows it's costing me my job. But if it doesn't, you have job security for the next 10 years. And that's a selling point for Austin Ford to him. Like, hey, you believe this is your guy? You're going to be gifted job security. You want to be jumping in front of the teams that supposedly are offering up Patrick Surtain. You can't dick around with this package. That's why I laugh at people. They're like, 3 1s is enough. It's not going to be enough for Austin Ford. If Patrick Surtain's being offered, you're getting more than 3 1s.
Right. And that's probably a big point of frustration, is like, they acquired this extra first weeks ago and they thought nobody's going to be in the stratosphere for everybody. Get out of the way, pave way. Let's get our police escort from 11 up into the top 5. Quarterback, please. Can we have it? Like, we need it right now. Let's start the new era of Vikings football. But the Broncos won't go away. And then, I've got our guy Joel. He's at us on Twitter. Appreciate it, Joel. And I saw this as well, as the Raiders get the blessing from old pumpkin pie haircut at freak Mark Davis, that they have his blessing to get up the draft. That's right. Your boy where do we see him? Mobile?
No, when we were in Vegas. Should I grab that picture for the viewer?
Oh yeah. Did you grab a selfie with Mark Davis? David just grabbed a random selfie at one point with Mark Davis. But
like an actual selfie? You went up to him and got a selfie with him?
But
I'll grab it right now.
Get that picture.
Via Paul Gutierrez, that Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce, they were given the blessing from Mark Davis to get up the board in the NFL draft. Now, are they legit players to get up the draft board? When you hear us talk about a potential Vikings package and Broncos package, I would think it'd be very tough for them to do so. But it's still this competition for suitors. It's good to be Monty Osborne. It continues to be.